Is UNLV rethinking their decision to stay in the Mountain West?
Conference realignment is always in the news, so we're back on the big mountain to keep you updated.
Hey, welcome back to the mountain. I am JY. This is my good friend Steve. We have another PAC update for you. We are close now to the end of January, and the clock just continues to tick for the PAC-12 and their media deal, and also securing additional members. All indications are that they will hit their expected deadline, if you want to call it that, of March. That's kind of been their target here for quite a while now. It looks like they will be hitting that in terms of announcing both the media deal that would begin in 2026 and also likely announcing additional members. And yes, I'm saying members with an S. As we reported 2 weeks ago, Texas State is in ongoing negotiations with the Pac-12. While this really hasn't been widely reported, there's been a lot of talk about Texas State, but not to the level that we have gone and said, no, they're actually in negotiations. I know that to be a fact, and I will double down on that reporting right now. It is actually occurring. I fully believe, I'll take it a step forward with my opinion and say, Texas State is going to be one of the members of the Pac-12 that will likely be announced. I'm going to say in March. I don't know the exact timing. I'm also not telling you my sources saying they have accepted membership yet. I know for a fact they're in negotiations, but I absolutely think they're going to be a member of the Pac. We'll call them 12 for now because that's still what they would like to be called. However, here, the PAC does not want just one more football member. That only takes them to 8. As we talk to Classy, as you hear, a lot of conversations that they have, they're looking for at least 9, I think 9 or 10 football members. So they have a couple members here that they want to add. And again, as I stated in our last update, I believe the next potential tier of adds includes North Texas and UTSA both from the American Athletic Conference. And while I've kept UNLV kind of down the list a little bit further, I had them underneath the North Texas and the UTSA. I want to talk about them specifically a little bit more now. I'm wearing my Rebel shirt, and this is going to be very focused on the UNLV Rebels here. I'm being told that the PAC continues to go after UNLV, and UNLV is listening to what the PAC is saying. Yes, UNLV and the PAC are having communications and have had communications over the past several weeks and past several months, and it is continuing. While nothing is imminent, that's not what I'm saying, nothing is imminent, we cannot close the door on the possibility that UNLV could become a PAC member in 2026. You may be asking yourself, well, why would they do this? And I want to break that down here a little bit more. I want to tell you what I'm kind of hearing. I want to break down kind of the MOUs and the membership agreement that the PAC has. But the main reason right now that I'm being told is due to the potential media deals. It's not necessarily about the lawsuits, while that does play a factor into it. The media deals is what they're really focused on right now. As we had reported here and talked about a couple weeks ago, Steve, you and I took a kind of a deeper dive into the media rights for the PAC and the Mountain West. If you guys are interested in that and didn't see it, you can check out our channel here. But I have been told that the early results for both conferences weren't very good. They weren't getting good engagement from media partners. Obviously their consultants were working on bringing them different ideas, different ways to kind of raise the monies that they're looking for here with these, but they didn't have great luck kind of early on, both of the conferences. Also, the PAC may be more open to streaming and having a mostly streaming deal, which is going to likely bring them more money than members or a conference that has a more linear deal. We've talked about that. That's been speculated a lot, but I think it's fairly well known that the streaming companies are likely going to be paying a little bit more money than what those linear markets and partners would probably do. So, again, we talked about that here 3 weeks ago. And, the PAC really has kind of been talking about for many, many months. You hear it from Gould a while back. She's talking about this transformational partnership. You've heard innovative come out of some of the ADs. I think Utah State's AD just had a discussion about that, kind of thinking outside the box a little bit more. So it really leads me to believe the PAC is much more likely, to probably take a higher payout with a higher percentage of streaming than what the Mountain West probably is going to do. That's just my take on where things are at right now. And depending on what that difference looks like, that could, potentially turn UNLV to reevaluate where they're at and the position they're in here with the Mountain West. Again, as I said, the lawsuits here I think could play a role, but as we sit here today, the media valuations are the driving force, I think, in UNLV's reassessment. But I want to go back and talk a little bit more about the MOU, Steve, because it's been a little while since we talked about the agreement that the Mountain West has agreed to, the 6 members there, to kind of save the conference, and how that kind of also plays against the new member agreement with the PAC. So before I go into that detail, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, I think that we kind of kept UNLV on a side burner for a while. When they first decided to come over or to stay and not leave with that group, a lot of it was, and you laid it out really well, it was more financially advantageous for them to stay in the Mountain West. So, the logical conclusion there is if they made the decision to stay because it was financially advantageous, if something were to change, would it make it more advantageous to go, then that could be a possibility. And again, like you just mentioned, we've really laid out the media contracts where it looks like maybe the Mountain West wants the exposure and wants to be on linear TV, right, have the eyeballs, where the PAC might be able to go a different way, not have as much traditional exposure, but maybe generate more revenue. So that that might make that opportunity. Now, what I'll say is, and you're going to get into the MOU a little bit here, and I just want to lay a precursor down, because I always make the joke about a contract is just a signed contract is just the first step in the negotiation when you break the contract.
Right.
Well, and I always say, these contracts and these separate, it's almost like a marriage and a divorce. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if breaking a contract is like a divorce after marriage, breaking an MOU is almost like an MOU is almost like the promise ring, not even the full marriage.
Right.
So
breaking an engagement.
Yeah, breaking an engagement.
Marriage.
So I'm interested to see what you have to say about the MOU and how that'll play in.
Well, and that brings up a good point that I just want to make sure, from what I'm understanding, and I have reached out to several people on this regarding the grant of rights for the Mountain West. I am fairly confident there has not been a grant of rights that would, kind of parlay with a media agreement. We see that with grant of rights. They kind of go hand in hand. So I don't think there's a finalized grant of rights that has been done yet. And then to your point with the MOU, I've seen some people say it is binding, some people say it is binding, and it very well, I think it does say in the MOU, this MOU is binding. But to your point, it's only as binding, until somebody feels like they want to litigate it, whether it's an MOU, a contract, a marriage, or whatever.
Right.
Anything and everything can be litigated. So, binding, not binding, I don't know. The teeth are maybe a little thicker if it's a binding contract, but again, it can still absolutely be litigated. So it's a little bit irrelevant, I would say. But anyway, let's go back. I want to deep dive a little bit again into the Mountain West MOU and how that plays in favor of the Rebels. They're getting it really good. Quite frankly, it's almost as good as the Mountain West can do.
Yes.
I'm not sure the Mountain West has many more cards to play in order to keep both the Air Force Falcons and the UNLV Rebels here. I think they've really done as much as they probably can. Maybe little bits and pieces, but nothing major. So take a look here again at the Mountain West MOU. It splits the exit fees that they're going to be getting from the departing members and the poaching fees, kind of add them all together into this agreement and how these things are going to be paid out. And UNLV and Air Force get the biggest chunk of those payouts. Also, maybe most importantly, the MOU provides no exit fee cost to a member if they leave for a Power 4 conference. So I'm going to get back to that part and how that plays against the new PAC agreement here in a few minutes. But I want to get into the kind of the money and how it's going to be allocated. I'm told that, before I get to that, I'm told that UNLV's goal here over the next 5-ish years is to get to a P4 conference. That is going to be called at their long-term goal. They want to be able to get to a long-term conference. So it's certainly advantageous, the Mountain West existing agreement that doesn't have those exit fees. But again, I want to take a closer look here at the money owed potentially to UNLV right now. The Mountain West is due to receive about $140 million. We don't know the exact number, but it's about $140 million in total from both the exit and poaching fees. Even with settlements, a lower amount of $100 million, I think is still very possible. But I want to kind of lay out how these payments would go to UNLV. So the first $61 million received, of that money, of the $61 million, $15 million goes to UNLV. I think, as we sit here today, they're going to get $61+ million. So we know UNLV is going to receive $51 million here for this MOU. Then the next amount is set aside for money that they're going to use to help acquire members. It's $18 million. They have that money kind of set aside. We don't know exactly how they're going to pay that. But then the last $21 million to get you up to that first $100 million goes back to the allocations of the first $61 million. So of that next $21 million, UNLV receives another $5 million. So even if these items are settled, let's just say for $100 million, they're owed 140-ish. Let's say everything's settled for about 100 in total. UNLV's share of this is about $20 million. And that's paid directly to them over the next, it gets into the payments and all that kind of stuff, but that's money directly to UNLV. Remember, if they will go to the PAC, not only are they not going to receive this $20 million, but they're actually going to have to pay an exit fee to the Mountain West. So you're going to, potentially, if they decide to go to the PAC, they're going to forfeit the money that they're currently told that they're going to be getting, and also another $15-ish million, but depending on the announcement date and all that kind of jazz. So that's a delta of $35 million. And again, we're not talking exit fees, into the future here. I'm talking today. If they chose to switch. Now, of course, they can litigate the exit fee. We're seeing that, so I'm giving you kind of what the contracts currently say. But $35 million is a pretty substantial chunk of money for any school to make a switch between conferences. And again, if the Mountain West receives more than that $100 million, that only increases the $35 million. So to me, that $35 million is kind of like the floor, and I think it could potentially even be higher than that. So let's just assume for this exercise, the difference between the PAC and the Mountain West media deal is $6 million. Let's just assume it's $6 million. That would take the next 6 years to make up that difference. So, we're talking about the 2031, 2032 timeframe with these MOUs. They're at least breaking even just with that. And we haven't even gotten into the exit fee yet. So I want to get to that next, Steve, because that could be for a school like UNLV that is pushing for a Power 4 invite, or that's where they're trying to build towards. That's another piece they have to really think about here. So again, the PAC agreement says that there are exit fees to leave that conference. It states that if you're going to leave for a non-A4 conference, that exit fee is 2 times the previous year distribution. However, the penalty to leave to a power or an autonomous conference is even greater at 3 times the previous year's distribution. And that goes through the term of their agreement, which is going to be their grant of rights, of June of 2031. So that's a lot more money than just the $35 million that I had just talked about for today. We could be talking about another $35, $40, $50 million if they wanted to jump to a power conference in the year 29, 30, something before that grant of rights in the PAC were to change. And again, that's a huge difference. So there's definitely 2 legs of the stool there that they really need to be aware of and watching. And while the media deal is something they need to pay attention to, it's kind of small potatoes when you look at the grand scheme of what we know today to be in these MOUs. So it remains to be seen how serious the discussions are between the PAC and UNLV. All I can tell you is that they are happening. What seems to be unknown right now is the seriousness of these discussions, Steve. I've heard some people, some of my sources say they actually think that UNLV is going to be in the PAC come March, or announce, not come March, but announce that they're going to be going to the PAC come March of this year. I've heard others say this is really just exploratory, seeing, what little meat is left on the bone. Can they really do anything? Just, again, keeping their options open. So while they're having the discussions, really unsure about how serious they are, at least UNLV is, in those discussions. The one thing I do know, as of today, I have not had anyone, no source tell me that UNLV is completely off the table for the PAC and securely in the Mountain West membership. So nobody has told me that. So to me, that means they're absolutely an option. To what degree, I'm not sure. I'm going to give my opinion. Then, of course, we're going to hear from Steve. Again, my opinion here for the PAC is that they would have to do something different than what we know in their original MOU agreement to get UNLV to kind of bite. I think those exit fees that I just talked about are a huge concern for UNLV. I think, that $35 million that I talked about, that's a pretty big concern. But again, that one maybe can get overlooked depending on what the media rights negotiations are looking like. But that exit fee is huge. There would have to be some sort of give and take with that, I think, in order to get UNLV to make that jump. And it could be modified. I mean, it's like we say, it's binding as long as they want to keep it binding. It absolutely could be modified. I'm not sure if that's on the table or not. Effective today, I am going to be moving. I did a ranking on X, and I'll be moving UNLV over into the same category where I have UTSA and North Texas as a possibility. I had them prior being very unlikely or unlikely. I'm going to shift them over a column and say it is possible that we see UNLV change their minds here and move to the PAC. I still think Texas State is a lock. So potentially, Texas State would give their eighth member. I think between North Texas, UTSA, and UNLV, that's where the PAC is going to be getting their ninth and possibly 10th member. If they want to go to 10, at least they're going to be going to 9. Last thing I'm going to say, Steve, if these lawsuits blow up in the Mountain West face, all bets are off. That changes everything that I just said. I think that's a little bit unlikely, and we're not going to know if that's going to happen for a very long time. And to get through these court cases, we only have the dismissal hearing in March. To you get through all that, I mean, you're talking years from now. So the lawsuit piece, while a lot of people like to bring that up, man, it's going to take a lot of time. We see now what's happening with the ACC. It has just gone quiet. Nothing's going on. And that's exactly what could happen here. So unless something really blows up with the lawsuits, I'm not overly concerned. Really, from either side on that, I don't think it really moves the bar. So those are my opinions, Steve. What are you thinking?
So some things really jumped out. You did a great breakdown of the numbers there and kind of where we would get to the break-even point and all that stuff. And there's kind of an intersection of numbers of what you were telling me here.
Yeah.
And so the year 2031 really jumps out at me.
Yeah.
So first of all, I want to say, and I agree, you said basically the Mountain West has done everything they can to keep UNLV. And I think that is correct. They basically gave them a sweetheart deal. And for now, UNLV has taken that.
Right.
And there's a very good chance that they will continue with that deal, at least through like this first round of media rights and all that kind of stuff. But, and that's the reason that, let's just be clear. That's the reason that they stayed in the Mountain West, because of this great deal that they are getting.
Yes.
And you laid out the financials. So my guess at this point is UNLV is doing the math, just like you just broke down.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the PAC's agreement is through 2031.
Yeah.
And, they eventually, and you said, I think in the next 4 to 5 years, want to get to a P4. Okay.
Right.
So 2025, everyone's locked in solid. No, nothing's changing in 2025. So if we start as 2026 as the first year that anything can really happen, what's 2031 minus 2026? 5 years.
Right.
So that, your break-even point, if they do leave, and their PAC commitment is, we're seeing that timeline converge as 2031.
Right.
So to me, I think what they're doing, they're just doing the math right now. what works out better. And a big part of that is going to end up the delta, like you mentioned, between the Mountain West media deal and the PAC media deal.
Right.
And if that difference is, let's say it's 1 or 2 million less than what you estimated here, that changes the math. But if it's 1 or 2 million more than you estimated here, that could change the math in a hurry. And then the same thing, like the settlements and all that, we're not going to have a resolution by March on any of that stuff.
Yeah.
However, with UNLV being inside, they may have an idea already of how they think things are going to play out.
Right.
And maybe, they're thinking, okay, the exit fees are definitely going to be paid out, but we're not going to count on those poaching penalties just because of how we see things playing out.
Yeah.
So I think they're doing the math right now, which is what they should do. If you're a decision maker, we've talked about this all the time, the decision makers, presidents, boards of trustees, they have fiduciary responsibilities to these universities. To do the best deal to make the school the most amount of money so that they can support their student athletes, their athletic programs, and all that. So I think you did a great job. I think this one could go either way, and it's just a determination of them doing the math. And some of that's a little bit guesswork. Okay?
It is. Yeah.
The field you work in, you're very precise with, because it's kind of, you're detailing what has happened in the past. They have to do a little bit of guesswork here, and when they're doing their math. So we'll see how it goes. So I think it's very fair of you to move them into that category of, you can't count on them being a definite.
Right.
If they see a better financial opportunity, they may go ahead and jump ship. But at the same time, the Mountain West has done everything. Like, if they do leave, you cannot blame Gloria. You cannot blame the Mountain West. They've done everything to keep them in the boat with a great deal there that's going to be hard to overcome.
Right. And that was the goal.
Yeah.
Trying to keep them with a deal that's going to be hard to overcome. And so far, that has worked.
Yes.
For all the Mountain West, I know we have a lot of Mountain West followers because that's one of the main conferences we follow. It's easy to say, well, if they go, they're backstabbers, they yada yada yada, and I get that emotional side of it, but I also get they're in the business side of it, and they have to do what's best for them as a university. Yep. I think, given what we know today, UNLV should stay put. I don't think there's enough benefit at all to move to the PAC again, unless these media values, which I don't think is going to happen, are dramatically different. I use $6 million in my example there. I don't think that's too far off. I don't think we're talking $10 or $15 million differences here. If we are, then yeah, UNLV's gone. Right. But I don't think that's what we're talking. I think we're talking $5 to $6 million. And again, to your point on the timeline, the 2031, that $5 to $6 million, you're kind of right at that lukewarm area too. It's not an easy answer. So they're going to have to do what's best for them, and we'll have to wait and see. I think we're going to learn a lot about the PAC in March. As I said when we started this episode, that looks like they're going to be hitting their timeline of having the media deal in March, and they have to know who their additions are, quite frankly. Like, they know right now kind of who their maybe 3 or 4 potential members could be. They're working with the media partners, whoever they're kind of honing in on now, and they're going to solidify all of that at one time. Maybe leave one open spot as a what-if type of deal for that maybe 10th member. But I think we're going to know 2 additional members, up to 9 football members with the media deal here in March, with maybe and they're not going to tell you this, but maybe there's kind of a left open spot for maybe 1 or 2 schools, and UNLV could be that leftover spot. I mean, I could see them coming out with 9 without UNLV, and then something happens with the Mountain West, with the lawsuits, and then it ends up being UNLV in a year or 2. So you never know. But yeah.
I do have one additional thought. A lot of the schools that you're talking about, Texas.
Yes.
We've done a lot of episodes of potential, Mountain West teams, potential PAC teams. And, it's that same recurring theme of they need to get into Texas. Mm-hmm. The media partners seem to want the central time zone, and everybody wants to be in Texas. Growing population, there's money, everything. So we see, it looks like the PAC is targeting these Texas schools. I know the Mountain West kind of had some forays into looking into Texas. And I think that's smart from both conferences, and I think we're going to see that recurring theme over and over again.
Yep, I agree with you. So with that, hey, we thank you guys for watching. There is the change that we have for the PAC here this week. As you know, we stay on all things Mountain West and PAC and Big Ten. We have a Big Ten update coming out here later this week, and we have our live episode Wednesday night. Would love to see you on our live show, 8:30 Eastern. With that, make sure you like this one, subscribe if you like our content. We'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.